this segment, Deborah and I are going to demonstrate the top rope process. We'll define the top rope, we'll demonstrate partner checks, the proper setup, we'll talk about the belay, proper belay technique, and finally communications, climbing calls. So, top rope setup, what is that? Well, a top rope setup, the climber always has the rope going from him or her up to an anchor. They always have a rope above themselves so that when there's a fall, the distance of the fall is very limited. So, we have an anchor up here. We could have gotten that anchor was perhaps established by scrambling up to the top and building an anchor, or perhaps somebody had to lead up to set that up. It doesn't really matter at this point. We have an anchor set up, and a rope is running from Deborah up to the anchor and back down to me. Now, we have quite a bit of slack in the rope right now because we just have the rope hanging down from the anchor, and we're getting ready to climb. So the first thing Deborah's going to do is tie into the rope, which she's already done. And I'm going to pull the slack out of the system, pull the rope through the anchor until it finally goes tight on her. All right, and she's going to let me know that all the slack is out by saying,
"That's me."
Great, okay. So I want to pull all the slack out of the system before I get the belay set up. So the way I do that is I get that parabiner you have and the slot device, generically called, or an ATC is Black Diamond's name for it, and I'm going to put it into my belay loop. All right, and I'm going to take the rope, the climbing rope, and I'll take a bite, and I'll pay attention to which side the climbing rope is on and which side the brake is on, if you will, the tail. And I'll take that bite, I'll put it into a slot through the device. Generally speaking, I'll use the slot that's nearest my brake hand, though that's not a critical consideration. And then I'll clip both the rope and the wire that the belay device is on, and then I'll lock it on my belay loop. So I'll just take a moment to talk about locking your locking carabiner. Whenever you use a locking carabiner, lock it as soon as you use it. So as soon as I put the rope into that, I'm using it. I want to lock it right now and not depend on coming back later and remembering to come back later and lock it. All right. So also on this belay device, this wire, it's not critical that the wire, the purpose of the wire here is to keep the belay device near my belay carabiner. It's not structural. If it's kinked, don't worry about that. That's not important. It's just a handy wire to be able to loop it onto my harness or to keep it in the vicinity here of my belay device. All right, so now I've got my belay set up correctly. I'm going to pull the rope through. All right, and now I'm going to go through my partner checks. Now the partner checks are a critical discipline that we do every single time before we climb. So every time before Deborah starts to climb and I start to belay her, or vice versa, when we switch ropes and I get on the rope, we're going to do our partner checks again. This is a discipline that often falls away with experienced climbers, but the purpose is to make sure that when we make a mistake, because no matter how experienced you are, you're going to make a mistake sooner or later, that we catch that error before it has serious consequences. All right, so our partner checks. What's important for us, for Deborah as a climber, and what I care about for her, is that her harness is on correctly, that her rope is through both tie-in points on the harness, and that she has a good figure-8 knot with adequate tail. So that's what I care about for her. What I care about for me, and what Deborah cares about for me, is that my harness is on correctly, that I'm locked on my belay loop, and that I'm loaded correctly. All right? Now, let me just say right now, in my partner checks, I often say when I look at the harness, I check the buckles and make sure that they're doubled back. Well, we have a couple of different styles of harnesses. This harness, and Deborah's too for that matter, have what's called speed buckles. So they don't literally double back. They're kind of handy because I can just loosen the buckle and slide in and out of my harness and then cinch it up. But the other style harness, of which I have many, and the club harnesses are of the same design, have a tail that literally that goes to the buckle and literally has to be doubled back through the buckle to make it safe on both the leg loops and the waist loop. So I simply use that term double back to indicate that the buckles are in fact buckled correctly. All right, so let's go through the partner checks. I like to use a minimum of words to communicate between Deborah and I. And she'll demonstrate that as she goes through her partner check, her check for herself, her own setup. She'll go through it and I'll listen to her. And then I'll go through my own, tell her what I've done, and she'll listen to me. So, Deborah?
3 double back, rope is through both loops, and I've got a good knot.
Perfect, awesome. All right, I'm double backed on 3, and I check it. I don't just say it, I look at the buckles. I'm locked on the belay loop and loaded correctly. We're ready to climb. All right, the last thing we need to do before we start to climb is to make sure that the system is closed. And by that I mean we have positive control of both ends of the rope. This end, we know what's going on with it. It's tied into Deborah. We need to take the other end of the rope, which is free right now. It's open. We're going to close the system by tying a stopper knot in the end of the rope. And I'm just going to use a barrel knot or a double fisherman's knot, a grapevine knot, to create a knot, stopper knot in the end of the rope. So now this rope can't by any fashion run completely through my belay device. It'll get stuck. So we have positive control. All right, so let me just mention how this device works. All right, this belay device, which we also use for rappelling, works by developing a lot of friction over this edge, the rope running around the carabiner, and then a rope running over this edge, so that my brake hand to control this rope doesn't need a death grip. It only simply needs to maintain positive control of this rope and control of the angle over this last angle coming out of the rope coming out of the belay device. So it doesn't take a death grip to manage the brake. All right. So let's demonstrate the proper belay technique. Let's go ahead and give me some slack here. All right. So if you used other belay techniques than this, if you took this class from AMC years ago or whatever, and you learned some other method, I'm going to ask you to forget that method. We're going to demonstrate the current best practice for belaying. And it's called pull brake under slide, or P-bus for short. So the way this works is I've got my free hand. I'll call it my haul hand or my guide hand is called sometimes. It's free to do whatever I need to do. I'm going to brake with my right hand since I'm right-handed. And that right hand, that brake hand, is going to be on this rope and committed to being on the brake and maintaining positive control at all times. But this hand's free for whatever it needs to do. So the process is to take slack out of the rope is to pull the rope through the anchor and simultaneously with my brake hand pull it out through the device down, that's brake, in the brake position, under slide. So I can reset my brake hand to get ready for the next cycle. So the cycle again is pull, brake, under, slide. Pull, brake, under, slide. And it feels awkward at first, but you'll get a hang of it really soon. It'll be automatic. Pull, brake, under, slide. All right. Now, when the climber's not moving, we want to keep that brake hand more down toward the hip. We don't want to be too close to the device, because if Deborah falls, and she's going to fall sometimes, if I'm too close, I can be sucked in and get a terrible pinch and possibly lose control of the brake. So that would be really bad. So we always want to maintain a good distance here between the device and our brake hand so we can anticipate that little bit of slippage as she falls. All right? So the other thing that we get into sometimes, and I do the same thing if I get a little bit greedy and she's moving fast, I'll try to pull in a whole bunch at one time, and now I've got a lot of slack in this brake, and it's just awkward to reach down underneath and to reset. All right? I can avoid that by just taking shorter strokes, okay? I kind of think of it as fishing, so I don't really even have to pay attention to what I don't have to watch her climbing. I just feel the tension in this rope. And as soon as I feel the tension go out, I'll take that slack out, and I'll just maintain a good tight top rope, as tight as she wants it, on her. And I can do that really by feel best. So that's the process for the P-bus belay technique.